Layla, I noticed the word moss in a poem yesterday. It sounded calm and quiet, but I'm not sure I fully understand what moss is. Moss really does have a calm feeling. Moss is a small, soft, green plant that grows in damp, shady places, usually on rocks, trees, walls, or soil. So moss isn't grass? No, moss isn't grass. Moss doesn't have deep roots like grass. It spreads gently and slowly, which is why moss often looks like a green carpet. I've seen moss growing on old stones and walls. Exactly. Old walls, forest floors, tree trunks, and riverbanks often collect moss. Moss loves moisture and shade. Can we use moss in daily conversation? Yes, very naturally. For example, there's moss growing on the steps, or the rock is covered with moss. What about expressions? I've heard a rolling stone gathers no moss. That's a famous saying. Here, moss symbolizes stability or attachment. The saying means that someone who never settles doesn't gather responsibilities or long term ties. So, moss can be symbolic? Very much so. Moss often symbolizes age, time, quietness, and stillness. When something is covered in moss, it feels old and untouched. Interesting. Can moss be used metaphorically in modern speech? Yes, someone might say the idea is covered in moss, meaning it's old or outdated, or the place feels mossy, suggesting it's ancient or forgotten. I like that. Does moss have any practical use? Yes, moss helps keep soil moist, prevents erosion, and in gardening, moss is sometimes used for decoration. Some people even grow moss gardens. So moss isn't useless at all. Not at all. Moss plays a quiet but important role in nature. Can moss describe a feeling or atmosphere? Definitely. You might hear, the forest felt soft and mossy, or the silence was thick, like moss. Moss often adds a peaceful, slow mood to descriptions. What about everyday sentences? Here are some natural ones. Moss is growing on the roof. The stone was slippery with moss. The garden looks beautiful with moss between the stones. Can moss be dangerous? Sometimes. Moss can make surfaces slippery. People often say, be careful, there's moss on the path. That's true. I almost slipped once because of moss. Exactly. So, moss can be beautiful, but also something to watch out for. Can moss grow indoors? Yes, if there's enough moisture and shade. Some people keep moss in terrariums. So moss can be natural, decorative, and symbolic. That's right. Moss connects nature, time, and calmness. Let me try using it. The old wall was covered in moss, and the moss made the place feel peaceful. That sounds perfect and natural. It's amazing how a small plant like moss can carry so much meaning. That's the beauty of moss, quiet, slow, and full of history. I think I'll notice moss everywhere now. You will. Once you understand moss, you start seeing it not just as a plant, but as a feeling.